Listen to more of that later. Hi, I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Moossy.
And this is Let Them Talk. And I wanted to begin first. Our Ahmed Sala, our guest from Egypt, is going to be talking about the Egyptian Revolution, which is a lot more intense than what you saw. But by New York City standards and American United States standards, that was pretty intense. All right, and that was at 2 days ago, several days ago at Occupy Wall Street on Broadway on Friday, I believe, and thousands and thousands of people, more than ever. It was bigger than it was even last year. It was like right at the very beginning, and people held last night until a very late hour. Zuccotti Park all over again. It was like old times. It was like old times. Okay, so for a little bit, anyway. So anyway, welcome to Let Them Talk. And
yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks. And the rain. Ahmed came through the rain and storming. It's storming out there like an epic rainstorm, and he made it to tell his story. So and Zen is coming too. He's not going to be on the show, but thanks to all the folks who helped us, and Clark Sullivan as well. In a lot of ways, what happened in Egypt, Ahmed, was the spring, whatever you want to call it, March last year or the year before last, was maybe it's often sort of called the event that sort of sparked many other movements throughout not only Western Asia, but here in the United States, as we've seen in Europe as well. Do you think people are overselling that, or is there a direct connection?
There is absolutely a direct connection, because the very special thing about this Egyptian revolution or uprising or whatever you want to call it, which by the way still is continuing, because we have not finished with the revolution. There keeps to be all these waves until we have managed to reach our aspirations and our demands. The very special thing about it is that it was pre-planned and premeditated, let's say. Mm-hmm. So it was something that did not come out in a spontaneous manner. It was actually made up, and it was made up under conditions that were extremely kind of, how would I call this? The people in Egypt had lost all hope. They were completely unaccepting even the possibility that there could be a spark of hope coming on the way. With the Tunisian revolution, you would think that this had started to give people some hope, but actually no. 8 Egyptians have put themselves on fire.
Okay.
We have been calling for protests and, you know, like people taking to the streets and to try to replicate that model, and we would end up just a few dozen protesters as usual. Everybody else would be passing by, looking at us, thinking we're crazy, because there is no way to defeat such a formidable regime.
Right.
One of the strongest probably that can be, with about 2 million men in uniform, you know, 1.7 million in the security and over 300,000 in the military. So who can stand against this?
Right. That would be the first thing you would think. And yet, folks in Egypt did stand.
It was as surprising as it can ever be, even to me. Like I kind of had a great part of the plan for the initial protest for January 25th, and I did, because of how we were rushed. My original plans were to start something by April or July, and with all these different calls and things, and with Tunisia, so there was this hastily attempt to try to save the situation, to salvage this situation, so that the day will be a good day, a successful day, the beginning of what can develop into a revolution. And it was just a huge shock to me to see that all those different small groups that I've been trying to connect with and who had no experience, who were completely like amateurs, first-timers, most cases, and ever in protest, and they did such a great job. I was just like, I was crying out of happiness, not just the tear gas.
But the exhilaration.
Yeah, well, I'm going to shake your hands and thank you so much for what you did, because it woke people up in America. For a long time, people have been asleep here, and still are many, but you were the first
But it
move.
did have international repercussions. I mean, there's no getting around that. It really did. It set off a spark in people. It was a real moment in time that's hard to know how is it.
Yeah, and because actually we went through all these challenges, like defeating the security forces that are huge in the millions, and incredible battles where absolute brutality was used against the protesters, and so many people were killed by live ammo and other means, and then to continue under such harsh circumstances with waves of like hired thugs trying to attack, so that it wouldn't seem like it's the security or the military that are doing it. And then throughout all the other waves of the revolution, particularly the Battle of Muhammad Mahmud between the 19th and 25th of November last year, in which we had the pleasure of actually probably emptying the storehouses of Combined Systems International Company in Philadelphia. There was the amount of tear gas that was used in the millions, and not
I was
only
at protest. They have offices here, or the company that owns them has offices here. Finances them. Ahmed Sala, let's stop. This is an incredible story. I want folks to know more about you and your role in all of this. How long were you working on making a revolution happen in Egypt, or trying to get something going?
That's a little complicated. Okay, my activism, of course, goes to so many years, because I come from a political family, and this political family goes in generations. But as for trying to make a revolution, you would be surprised to hear that this had started in 2003. Not started to try to make a revolution, but to try to build up something. So with the main landmark was what happened on March 20th and March 21st, 2003, was the invasion of Iraq. Because as soon as the United States started the invasion of Iraq with the bombing, we went spontaneously actually to Tahrir. We managed to take Tahrir, but then that ended with brutality at night, and then we had a huge protest the following day, and this was ended also with absolute brutality, where if I would tell you, you wouldn't believe me, but there were piles of bleeding bodies in the street by the security, piles. You wouldn't know if they are dead or injured.
In Tahrir, in Cairo.
Yes, and nobody paid any attention to that, because everybody was busy with the war, of course, and all that. But that was followed by everybody realizing there is no enemy outside that can be more dangerous than the enemy inside. We really have to solve this problem. We are under absolute direct occupation from a kleptocracy, and this kleptocracy is willing to do whatever it takes, even if it will exterminate the population in order to survive. And we have to take a stand, and this was the beginning of the whole thing, with many different attempts making movements that would rise and fall and so on.
I see. And what do you think was different about 2 years ago?
I don't know, it was just a set of circumstances, I believe, in addition to shutting the security with a new plan. And because the security thought that it's only a call on the internet, like all the calls on the internet that we've had before, which had always failed, because the audience of the internet in Egypt is very limited, Keyboard activists are only keyboard activists. In virtual reality, they don't take it to the street. In Egypt, that's the way. And they are limited in number. So, okay, it's just another thing. But then there was actually the planning and trying to make this simultaneous action everywhere at the same time, so that we will have all those small protests starting from the narrowest areas. That was on purpose, because we've always had been doing the mistake of starting in big spaces, so we seem so little in a big space,
like
and people to come into the street, they would want to see other masses out there. So my solution was, it's not only about how many people are out there, it's how many people in how big of space, so that you have to start in the narrow space.
How does it appear?
Yeah. After,
make it bigger after time, so people will be
you
attracted
prepare,
to it.
you prepare the area. You know, there are like set of instructions I've been trying to give in a training, how to distribute flyers without being caught, how to write graffiti without being caught. You know, there are formations, time limits, and stuff like that. Some rumors to spread that would get everybody aware of the situation, and then to start in the narrow streets, and then to move up and down, and then to go around the area, and then into the central point in every city that we want to occupy, so that it's a massive action everywhere. Security will have no other option but to withdraw, fortify their lines, and try to attack the protesters in sensitive areas. And they cannot just chase everybody in the back streets everywhere.
I see. Well, you mentioned the internet a moment ago.
Yeah.
I was actually watching a program a little while before I came here in which there were clips from all these different major news outlets in the United States, and they were all saying the same thing. The Arab Spring was created by the internet.
Yeah, I know.
Twitter and all that. It never would have happened without
That's
that.
a myth. That's an absolute myth, because we've been relying on the internet for 3 years, and what was the result? Zero. Big zero. It's always failure. It was when there was a different plan, an action plan in the street, getting the word to all the people, because most of the people, they have no internet, and the few who have internet, they never use it for political reasons, out of fear from security, because security actually, you know, follows up people doing that, and
they
and
watch
so
what's on the internet.
Yeah, so like that had very limited access to a very limited number of persons who in most cases never take action, because as I said, they are just keyboard activists. They never interact with their family, friends, neighbors, anybody. They just keep that to themselves, attend or like to some events, but never go there themselves. So this was the issue. It was not the internet, it was direct action industry.
Sure. Now, how's the last 2 years? I mean, what has that achieved? What has the revolution achieved? You had an election, we have a new president, Moossy, right?
Moossy, yeah.
Moossy, right? And
nothing much had changed in that regard, I'm afraid to say. We still have 12,000 revolutionaries behind bars. We are still trying to fight for their release and for change. We are only waiting because Moossy had vowed that he will do all these goals within 100 days, but his time is about to end soon. So we are waiting. We are not trying to challenge him for the duration of the 100 days, and even maybe we'll give him more, because what we want is that our goals would be achieved. But no, I mean, we've been fighting for a long time, because following Mubarak's fall, that was the military that took over, and the military were very, very trenched into power, and they have been doing horrible things, including like in the battle of Muhammad Mahmoud. I didn't finish with that. They used at some occasions some chemical weapons, like white phosphorus, VX, Tabon, and so on. So it was always very hard.
Let's tell the story of that battle, the Battle of Mahmoud, right?
Muhammad Mahmoud, yeah.
Mahmoud. What was that about? I've read a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear from your
It started with we had a big day in Tahrir, and then everybody left. So the security went there afterwards and attacked some of the injured from the revolution that were in a couple of tents over there. When everybody heard about it, people just went to Tahrir, and they reoccupied Tahrir, and then they stormed Tahrir from Muhammad Mahmoud and killed several people, and they were dragging the bodies, throwing them in garbage. I don't know if you've seen the images, but they are very gross. So people just like came all over again, and the battle became who would take control on that street to avoid other incursions into the square, because in the square behind you would have all sorts of people, families, you know, like children, elderly people. Everybody wants to be there to show support for the revolution. So all those who can fight, they would go in Muhammad Mahmoud, and they will be killed in many occasions by the excessive exposure to CS gas, or actually chemical weapons, because some people, for example, started to burn from inside out because of the white phosphorus. There is white phosphorus that was used, Tabon was used, and VX.
What was used? What was that top?
Tabon. They are nerve agents. So you would have convulsions, and you would have all this stuff coming out, and people would just die.
Where does that stuff come from?
I don't know, but I know that very well that CS and CR came from the United States, and they used a huge quantity of CS and a small quantity of CR.
Okay, very interesting. So there is some disappointment with the way things have been going with the recent election. How about the Egyptian military? Are they still asserting power?
I think the military didn't want to be directly in power. The thing about the military was that they didn't want that their empire to be destroyed and their role behind the curtains is exposed or eliminated.
Sure.
So obviously they have reached some agreement with the Islamists in power currently in order to have a safe exit somehow, and at the same time to maintain their role behind the scenes so that they are fine, and at the same time the Islamists will have the political role, so also they are fine and everybody would just share the cake.
Now, what do you think about the demand by the Egyptian president that the United States release the blind sheikh? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, about Sheikh Omar Abdurrahman. I think that this is to satisfy some of maybe the Islamist powers in the country who are belonging to the Salafist ideology, because these are pretty much his main hardcore supporters in the Muslim Brotherhood and those groups. And they are demanding the release of Omar Abdurrahman, so he has to play that card with the United States. I'm sure that he knows the United States will never release Omar Abdurrahman, but it's a political card, because he has to do this for his own domestic consumption about doing that to satisfy his hardcore supporters.
Right. I don't know if you're familiar with Lynn Stewart, the attorney who's in prison for strongly defending Sheikh Rahman, and we've had her on the show a few times, and her husband as well. Okay, so the other countries surrounding, how has this played out now? Tunisia, then Egypt, now we have Libya and Syria. Were those related to what happened in Egypt?
Yes, and in both cases they started non-violent, like in Egypt, and people were trying to continue in a non-violent manner, but just when the Gaddafi troops started to bomb, shell, urban populations indiscriminately and rape women and all that, and pretty much the same is happening in Syria, that turned in a different way.
How about in Syria? What's happening there today? What is happening there in Syria? Do you know any more than we do?
No, I don't think so. I think that everybody knows pretty much what's going on. Bashar is going as far as like he can ever go in trying to keep his power. He's been bombing whole neighborhoods, like burying families alive. You would have all these women and children that have been killed, not just men, who are of course obviously not combatant. So the people are just trying to face him with what they can, and it's a very harsh situation, unbelievable misery, and I don't know, but the world has to do something about it. I'm never really in favor of military interventions, and this was very clear in my opposition to the war in Iraq and all these other things. And in the case of Libya, also the Libyans had specific demands, and I have relayed actually those demands to in a meeting I had with Hillary Clinton and with Mike Posner, Assistant Secretary Mike Posner, before the National Security Resolution regarding Libya, and the United States actually respected their wishes, and they did as they have relayed those demands through me at that time. So no physical presence on the ground. But in the case of Syria, I think that we would need as much work as possible. So, like, I don't know, there has to be a contact with some of the groups over there and trying to help them in order to be able to fight that fight.
Now, this is a complex situation because you also have Iran, Israel, Syria, Turkey, all these countries, and each seem to be playing a different hand all at once. And then, of course, the people, which are the wild card. And it seems that an assault on the government of Syria might be also, the present government, the dictatorship, might also be, for some, like Israel and the United States, might see this as something that would assist them if they were to launch an attack on Iran, for example.
I don't know about this, but what I care about is not the politics. I'm not a politician. I'm never part in any political structure. What I care about is the people. The human life for me is more important than any of that BS.
Okay.
So if we can save lives, we have to do what it takes. That's what matters. Everything else is irrelevant.
How about the U.S.? I mean, do you think an Israeli or American attack on Iran is a possibility?
I don't think it is a big possibility at all, because I believe that if anybody has any brains in their heads, and they are saying these hints and sometimes even statements about the possibility, they would understand very well that currently the position of Iran is kind of isolated. There's lots of discomfort with Iran and distrust and even in some cases hostility. Now you want to start a war on Iran, this will be 180 degrees shift to the other way, and this could escalate into much worse. So do you really want to do this? Do you really think it's worth it? And like, how many nuclear heads are there in Israel? How many? 300? 400? Nobody really knows, but we know that at least they are in that within this category. So like, what if Iran would develop a couple of heads? Would this be like the absolute threat? Like, you could wipe out the whole area.
Right.
You know.
That's what it seems that way, but for some reason, this fear of weapons of mass destruction has been.
Yeah. I would like very much to see the Middle East totally cleared of any sort of weapons of mass destructions. Not only nuclear, chemical, and biological, because we still have this problem. We have had a taste of this. I'm sure in Syria they may have also had a taste of that.
What's next? What's next in Egypt?
What's next in Egypt? We are continuing on the path of the revolution until we have achieved democracy, freedom, equality, justice, social justice, all the demands. And I'm very much interested also in what's next here in the United States, because what the Occupy movement should be achieving should have a great impact on the rest of the world, not only in Egypt but in various parts of the world, because many of the problems in the world now are to some extent a result of probably old school policies of the United States school that did not understand yet that Cold War is over, and that we should move on and try to get people to be free and educated.
Were the folks in Egypt aware of the Occupy movement last year when it grew?
Of course, and there was mutual solidarity in many cases, so we would follow their news. We would very much be happy when they show Egyptian signs of support to Egypt, and the same I think had happened on the other way around. So
was that a surprise? Were you surprised when Occupy really took? Because back then it was the same type of thing. When I first heard that some folks were going to occupy Wall Street, I said that'll be about 5 minutes, and it'll be the shortest occupation in history, and it went on for 2 months.
Yeah.
And what do you think a year later?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think there's going to be growth, or do you think it's going to fizzle? Or
I have some points about the Occupy movement that I think some weaknesses that they have to work around, and I also some suggestions about they should do things. And I've been trying to relay this message in different meetings I've had.
Here's a good chance. We have a few minutes.
Well, there is a big problem about the following image, because most people would look at the occupiers as misfits, rejects of society, unemployed or homeless, and so on and so forth. Image is very important. Like, okay, you want to rebel by looking freely what you want, this is one thing, but you want to create a critical mass to actually make the change, that's a totally different story, because everybody, the average person, must identify with you. How could they identify with you if you look different? So this is something we know, we do that. The other thing is politics. Why do you have to impose any political ideology? You have all to agree on one thing that everybody can never agree about, like we do. Our goals would make a communist or a liberal or an Islamist or I don't know what, any kind of person, they would all stand shoulder to shoulder and they would fight that fight, because it's a fight for what we need, what we all want, to have equal rights, what we all want, not to get money to talk. No, our voice must be heard, and so on.
So it's finding common ground.
Absolutely, and this has to be very clear, always, over and over again. You can have your politics, you can leave it behind you when you get into here. That's very important. There are other issues about organization that are a little complex. We don't have time for this, but maybe I could also have a couple of suggestions, if I may, about. We have always been trying to get people on our side by identifying with their problems in every way. So you talk to anybody, and you would find that they have some grievances. You show support to such like their part in the problem and like how they want to solve it, and you would tell them that this is a symptom of a disease. I want to help you so much to eradicate the symptom, but we have to work together to eradicate the disease. You're free to come along or not, but I will always support you. This is, in short, the message. This also has to come probably in an easier way if we can pinpoint a few like target groups that can help us later on to do this in general. So in any country in the world, let it be the United States or Central Africa or Egypt or China, the population is divided into two main categories, not just at 99% and the 1%, but 80% and 20%. 80% that are inactive, uninvolved, mainstream, 20% that try to rebel against this in good or bad ways.
Sure.
So out of the 20%, you can have great people like Gandhi or horrible people like Hitler. So because they are strong people who can try to go against the current.
Sure.
You know, what we want is to try to get as many as possible to build a critical mass out of the 20%. Like we did in Egypt. It was the minority that did the change, not the majority. We still have the Sofa Party, as we call them, the 80%.
The American Revolution was made by 20%.
Exactly. This is the rule. Yeah.
80% didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Exactly. This is exactly the situation. So then what happens is you have to try to check out other groups, other fighters for different causes,
Sure.
and you try to work with them the same way I said. So you try to show them your solidarity. You see when they are going to make an event. You try to publicize it and
Sure.
to go there and all that. And always clarifying, your fight is just, your cause is just, but it is only a symptom. How could you get rid of a symptom totally without eradicating the disease? This is
Very good. Good point. Very good. We have half a minute. Just anything you'd like to tell folks in the United States, in New York right now?
I was very happy to see that the Occupy Wall Street movement has not lost its momentum, but I really hope that everyone can try to make the necessary changes to make it more effective and actually to expand and to become a tool for change.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed Sala, for joining us on Let Them Talk, and we'll see you next week with more interesting material from Occupy Wall Street in New York City and the whole world. Thank you for joining us. Joan, it was so great to have you back. We miss you so much. She was gone for a while. All right.